So you know if I did it before, am I right, officer? If I did it twice before.
Where'd you do it before?
I did it at Woodforest Bank, and I did it at
On August 26, 2024, a call quietly went out from a bank branch in the United States. There were no alarms, no panic, no raised voices, but something inside that bank didn't feel right. In a small private office near the back, a man sat across from the branch manager. On the desk in front of them were several checks, large checks, unusually large. The total amount written across those pieces of paper came to just under $1.6 million. At first glance, the checks looked professional. Clean edges, clear ink, perfect alignment, almost too perfect. The bank teller had already done what protocol required. The checks were scanned into the system. The routing numbers were checked. The account information was reviewed. Nothing matched. No transaction history. No verified account holder. No financial footprint that explained how this man, with almost no credit history, suddenly had access to over $1 million. The system flagged everything. Then came the identification. The man presented a passport. He didn't hesitate, didn't fumble, didn't seem nervous. But the manager noticed something immediately. The photo background was wrong. The formatting didn't align with US passport standards. The date sequence looked reversed. It didn't look like something issued by the United States government. Bank security was contacted, and security made the call to local police. When officers arrived, they were briefed quickly. A man attempting to deposit nearly $1.6 million, checks that didn't clear basic verification, a passport that appeared fake. The officers stepped into the office. The man smiled. He didn't look like someone worried about being caught. He looked like someone confident he couldn't be touched. When asked where the funds came from, he answered without hesitation, the Federal Reserve Bank, St. Louis. That single sentence changed everything. Federal Reserve banks do not hold personal accounts. They do not issue personal checks. They do not authorize individuals to write checks against them. The officers knew this. The bank manager knew this. Still, the man insisted. He said the money belonged to a private trust, a family trust, an inheritance from his parents' estate. He claimed he had written permission from the Federal Reserve Bank and the IRS to use the account. When asked for a driver's license, he said he didn't have one. When told he couldn't drive without one, he calmly replied that he didn't need it. He wasn't driving, he said. He was traveling. That was the moment the tone shifted. He began explaining that laws didn't apply to him the same way they applied to everyone else. That he was an internationally protected person. That federal authority overruled state authority. That trusts could own vehicles and operate independently of licensing laws. He rejected the term sovereign citizen, yet repeated every core belief associated with it. He said he used these methods before at other banks. Without issue, he said if the checks scanned, that meant they were real. But scanning doesn't verify legitimacy, it only reads ink. The officers continued listening, letting him talk, letting the story grow. He claimed to be a former law enforcement officer, a former county sheriff's deputy, someone who understood the system better than the people questioning him. Yet when pressed for documentation, there was nothing solid, only words, only theories. The passport was examined again. The errors were undeniable. The print quality was inconsistent. Security features were missing. The layout was wrong. Meanwhile, calls were being made. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis was contacted directly, and the answer came back clearly. There was no account, no authorization, no trust registered with them, no personal checks issued. The checks were fraudulent. At that point, the situation was no longer unclear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a banking error. This was an attempted financial crime. When officers informed the man he was being detained for investigation, his tone changed. He grew louder, more defensive, more confrontational. He accused the officers of labeling him, of assuming, of disrespect. He demanded to know what law he had broken. He said depositing money wasn't illegal, but intent matters, and so does evidence. Fraudulent checks, fraudulent identification, false claims of federal authority. As he was placed in handcuffs, he continued insisting the money was real, that the system was wrong, that the law was being misused against him, but the facts were already locked in. Investigators confirmed the checks were counterfeit. The passport was fake. The trust did not exist. The total amount involved exceeded $1.6 million. The charges followed quickly. 2 felony counts of counterfeiting, 2 felony counts of passing bad checks, 3 felony counts of possession of criminal tools. Each charge tied directly to the documents he brought into that bank. In the end, the ideology he believed protected him became the very thing that exposed him. Because the law doesn't change based on belief. Money doesn't become real because someone says it is. And paper doesn't turn into authority just because it looks official. On an ordinary August afternoon, inside a quiet bank, a scheme built on false documents and false confidence collapsed completely. And the man who claimed the system didn't apply to him was taken away by the very system he said he didn't believe in.